whether this ends up being a big contagion event or maybe just a small little blip on our way to maybe better things ahead, there is still a lot of concerns about the health of financing in this country and the health of venture capital. That was a focus when it came to SVB. And of course, that is our focus right now. We want to continue this conversation with someone who knows this area intimately. Fairview Capital, it's one of the largest minority-owned venture capital firms out there. And they've been talking a lot, of course, about how they invest and, more importantly, the types of people who are invested in this. We want to get the perspectives right now of JoAnn Price. She's the co-founder and managing partner over at Fairview Capital Partners. JoAnn, really appreciate you joining us on the program today. And I do want to start off a little bit more broadly, given some of the turmoil out there, particularly when it comes to a lot of these startup companies out in Silicon Valley, companies that I know you are intimately aware of. And I'm curious as to how much you've heard from your own companies, the companies that your firm has invested in or invested through the fund of funds. Is there still concern out there here about how those companies find money and find resources to continue?
I think at this point, when the federal government stepped in, it allowed most of our companies to have some serious it had a major calming influence. The main thing with the venture capital business is that we are able to invest over time, and they have some opportunities when we're investing in venture to draw down capital as they need it and as they need to invest. And that makes a difference as well. But we are hearing from all the funds that we have invested in all over the country. And at this point, and basically what we're hearing from them, they have been able to manage well and manage their portfolio companies quite well.
So just to be clear, I mean, you're not really hearing any real, I guess, panic, for lack of a better word.
No, not panic. Once the federal government stepped in and allowed the bank to continue to operate relatively normally, I think everybody felt comfortable that they can continue to operate.
You, obviously, as a fund of funds, I mean, you're dealing closely with a lot of the pension fund industry. And on this program, we've talked a lot about how they have increased their allocation to private equity and other private forms of finance. I am curious as to whether you think that trend will continue. There was always some degree of criticism that there was a certain risk element there that, at least for certain types of funds, maybe was not appropriate. They pushed back on that, and at least for right now, it seems to have paid off. Is that going to continue to pay off?
I think it will continue. We're long-term investors, and we invest over time. And with institutional investors, where one portion of their portfolio is in private equity, and I think they're comfortable and confident. We have very good relationships with all of our investors across the country. And the interaction that we have had thus far has been very open, very positive. And we have we've had relationships with many of them for many years. And so far, so good. And we'll be staying tuned like everybody else.
I want to talk a little bit here about the growth of Fairview itself and really the growth of a lot of minority-owned, or at least majority-owned companies. I am curious about the attention, the investment that we saw over the last couple of years. We know Steve Ballmer, formerly at Microsoft, and a few other deep-pocketed folks finally turned their attention to a lot of companies like yours and funds of funds, as well as direct funds itself here. Has that attention continued a couple years out here?
Yes, it has. And I think it has continued to increase. I think it's important that all folks that invest in private equity look at the broadest opportunity in the marketplace. And we are seeing that. We certainly have seen that over the last 2 years specifically. And I think that's been very positive. When we started Fairview, many of our limited partners are public pension funds. And that was a good decision on our part, and we were able to build our company very well as a result of it. So at this point, we think that the Bombers and others that are looking, high net worth foundations, are stepping in more aggressively. But the public pension funds have been the most aggressive over time and the most dependable in terms of being investors continuously.
I was looking at the research that Fairview puts out, some of the historical data. I think something like a decade ago, we were talking about 100 or so Black or minority-owned venture capital firms out there and fund-of-funds firms out there, and now we're something around 600 or so plus here. Talk about some of the newer funds that have cropped up, some of these newer firms here, how well they've done, and more importantly, how much support they're getting.
I think the newer firms, and what's exciting about some of the newer firms, they're much more venture oriented. And so those are the opportunities that we're seeing at this time because we have a very deep knowledge of the venture business and the fund of funds business specifically within venture. It has allowed us to be very close to those funds that are raising capital. Even though we don't invest in everyone, we are very open to discussing and talking to those who are looking to raise capital and to raise funds, so that as they do it, they understand what they're dealing with and what they have to accomplish in order to be successful. So we have seen a constant increase. We've seen it across the country. I think when we started Fairview, what we were saying to the marketplace was that if you expand the marketplace broadly and look at all of the talent that we have broadly, that should then allow our returns on the funds that we're investing in to do quite well. And that's exactly what has happened at Fairview over time.
Has that led to, I guess, a more diverse crop of startups out there and maybe potential public companies?
Yes, absolutely it has. And not only that, proactively, even through the pandemic, we saw a number of newer funds start. We've been able to see funds that we've been investing in from the first time until now, into the second, third, and fourth funds. We've seen diversity in every way throughout the venture capital market. And I'm excited to say that I think we're going to continue to be able to see that.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking time for us, JoAnn. A real treat to talk to you. That's JoAnn Price. She's the co-founder and managing partner over at Fairview Capital Partners, one of the biggest